its American energy independence. I urge my colleagues to make the responsible choice, one that will keep this industry moving forward. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
From Minnesota.
Mr. President, I'm here with the senator from South Dakota. I first want to thank my colleague from Minnesota for his strong words. And also I'm here with the senator from South Dakota, Senator Thune, to talk about the legislation that we are introducing today, along with several other senators, to find a good way to handle this, not the way that this has been handled. My colleague from Minnesota talked about Senator Coburn's amendment that we'll be voting on tomorrow. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment. I believe that, first of all, we need to invest in homegrown energy, and that this amendment would abruptly eliminate the VTEC, the volumetric ethanol excise tax credit, immediately without any kind of a glide path during this year, so that the people who are directly or indirectly employed in this industry, 450,000 people, when you think about all of the jobs that we work on every single day, just because jobs are in states that maybe some people don't live in, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, these are very important jobs throughout the country. And the other piece of this that I think we can't neglect is the effect that this would have on gas prices. That being said, both Senator Thune and I understand that this is a situation that needs to change. We're in a difficult budget situation in the Senate, and that's why we're introducing legislation today and working with stakeholders and members from both sides of the aisle to find a reasonable solution that offers a responsible and cost-effective approach to reforming our biofuel policy. This bill would transition to a more sustainable model of support for renewable fuel production in America instead of pulling the rug out from under an industry with 4 days' notice that employs hundreds of thousands of people in this country, and also provides an alternative to oil. And I think that Senator Thune is here, and maybe he'd like to address this a bit. We'll go back and forth. But I think one thing that people need to understand is that this biofuel industry has become a major component of our fuel supply. One statistic is that the gasoline that is made from the oil that we import from Canada, people know that's our biggest trading partner from oil, we literally produce as much biofuels as we produce gas from the oil that we import from Canada. So it is a major part of our fuel supply, and something that you shouldn't just decide with 4 days' notice to change the rules of the game, when in fact, as a recent vote showed us, oil is keeping every single cent of their subsidy. And Senator Thune and I have a bill which basically gives away the subsidies for the rest of the year that the biofuels industry has, and puts $1 billion toward deficit reduction. $1 billion toward deficit reduction, as well as making some investment with the remaining money in the infrastructure that this industry needs to be able to compete on any kind of an even playing field with oil. So I know Senator Thune has some thoughts on this as well, and I would like to come back and talk a little bit about what's been going on with oil versus ethanol in this country. But I think it's important to understand that the bill that we're introducing today could be a major help, $1 billion into deficit reduction.
President, if I might just say to my colleague from Minnesota that I appreciate her good work and advocacy on this. This is something that we have been working on for some time, along with some of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle, for a lot of reasons. And one of which, of course, is as the senator from Minnesota mentioned, these are difficult fiscal times. Obviously, every area in our budget needs to be reviewed and scrutinized and looked at to see where we might be able to achieve some savings. But as my colleague noted, there is a right way and a wrong way to do this. And the way that's been proposed in the amendment that was filed and that on which the cloture vote will occur tomorrow is the wrong way. You cannot tell an industry in December that we're going to give you a set of policies that are going to be in effect for the year. You're going to be able to make investment decisions. You're going to be able to go to your lenders. You're going to be able to go and get financing, secure financing based upon this set of policies. We do that around here all the time. We make policy. We try and do it in a way, hopefully, that gives those who are investing their dollars some certainty about what those policies are going to be. Well, how can you then, in the middle of the year, come back and say, we're just going to pull the rug right out from under you? I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. This is gone. Well, frankly, there's a much better way to go about doing this, and what the senator from Minnesota and I have proposed does just that. And in my view, does this in a responsible, measured, thoughtful, reasonable way, gets to the same ultimate result, which is for those who are really interested in doing away with the volumetric ethanol excise tax credit, it does phase it out. But it does it in a way that doesn't create disruption and harm and allows people to plan for the future. And it also invests some of those resources in areas that are really important to the future of that industry, namely blender pumps, which is the one thing that doesn't exist out there today, at least not in any great numbers. And if those pumps were more available, you would see, I believe, a lot higher usage of the fuel than we already have seen. But we already know that it is 10% of our fuel supply. Now, whether the opponents of this like it or not, and I know they don't, there are 13 billion gallons of ethanol produced in this country. At least that's what it was in 2010. We assume it'll be that number, maybe a little bit higher this year. That displaces 445 million barrels of imported crude oil. 445 million barrels of imported crude oil, Mr. President. That is 55 million barrels more than the total crude oil imports from Saudi Arabia last year. Now think about that. A fuel that's produced from a kernel of corn now displaces more than the entire import of Saudi foreign oil into this country. That is what we ought to be looking at. We ought to be looking at more ways to raise or to produce domestic energy, homegrown energy, adding that to our fuel supply rather than taking it out. And what the amendment that our colleagues are trying to get a vote on tomorrow would do is basically to say to this industry, yes, we're going to take away this particular tax incentive, and we're going to do it right in the middle of the year. We're going to do it, and we don't like this industry, which I think is probably what animates a lot of the opposition to this, because if people look at the facts, and they look at the contribution that biofuels has made to our fuel supply in this country, it is significant. 10% of our entire fuel now is biofuels. And in fact, if you look at the other byproduct of biofuels, once you take the starch out of that kernel of corn and convert it into liquid form, you can get, for every bushel of corn, almost 3 gallons of ethanol. But you also get dry distiller's grain, which is something that has been used extensively now for feed for livestock. So if you take 5 billion bushels of corn, for example, that are used for ethanol production in any given year, the feed product equivalent is about 1.7 bushels of corn that's returned to the livestock food chain as this ethanol byproduct called dry distiller's grain. So you're adding additional protein that is fed to livestock in addition to the 3 gallons or almost 3 gallons of ethanol that you get from every single bushel of corn. And so, Mr. President, I do believe that there is an approach here that makes sense. And what the senator from Minnesota and I and many of our colleagues on both sides have come together around is a way in which we can move forward, do it in a way that not only makes it reasonable for the industry to plan for the future, but also in a way that returns dollars to the Treasury of this country, because there's $1 billion in here for debt retirement. And I think that's something that the industry recognizes, we all recognize we need to address, and it is addressed as part of this bill. And so I appreciate the good work of the senator from Minnesota in working with me and along with other colleagues of ours to introduce the bill that we introduced today.
And Mr. President, if I could continue, I thank Senator Thune for his work. And one point I think he made that is incredibly important. I think not every one of our colleagues understands that the way it is under the current rules, this VTEC that has been in place to make sure that we have an alternative to oil in this country ends at the end of this year. The one piece of it that continues for another year is the cellulosic research, the cellulosic credit, but the rest of it ends at the end of this year. So instead of looking at a glide path as suggested in our bill, where you could take $1 billion, put it into deficit reduction, take another $1 billion or so and put that, which would be going right now as a credit, put that into the infrastructure. The alternative here that's suggested by our colleague from Oklahoma Amendment is just to cut it off today, basically, with a few days' notice. And what I've heard time and time again from businesses, whether it's in the energy area or it's in the medical device area, they want certainty. They don't want Washington just coming in with one day's notice and changing things. So that's why the bill, I asked my colleagues to look at this bill as an alternative. We're glad to discuss details with them. One of the things we've tried to do with this bill to acknowledge the emerging field of cellulosic with algae and other forms of research into biofuels, that would continue into next year. But basically this would end VTEC as you know it, the proposal that Senator Thune and I have put forward. And you look at the comparisons here. Over the last few decades, more than $360 billion worth of subsidies have gone to oil companies. That is nearly 10 times greater than the investments we've made in homegrown biofuels. Now, they're set up in a different way, but those are the numbers. And so we have to remember that the jobs here with biofuels are jobs that are made in America. We're basically investing in the farmers and the workers of the Midwest instead of the oil cartels of the Mideast. And, you know, I've seen the boom in oil drilling in North Dakota. That's been a good thing. And so I'm not just a one-size-fuel person, but I think to disrupt an industry like this with no notice is just the wrong way to go. And I hope that our colleagues will look at our bill seriously, talk to us about this, think about how the gas prices, which have now topped $3.75 per gallon, while they're high now, you look at the fact, Chicago Tribune looked at the fact if we cease to produce the 13 billion gallons of ethanol that we make every year, as Senator Thune has pointed out, it would drive up prices at the pump as much as $1.40 per gallon. I don't think that's something we can afford right now. So we have put together a good faith proposal that basically for even those that have a lot of questions about biofuels right now, about ethanol, will have to admit is a dramatic change. It ends VTEC as we know it. It puts in a big chunk of change, $1 billion, that otherwise would be going to the subsidies this year, right now, toward deficit reduction, while still allowing for that infrastructure investment and then looking into next year for just some of the key pieces, but severely changing any kind of subsidy for this industry. So with that, I want to thank Senator Thune. I don't know if you have something. I think our time is ending here. You'd like to add?
If I might add one point here, and I think it's the Senator from Minnesota did point out that there are a significant number of jobs that are associated with this industry. In fact, 500,000 jobs. They're American jobs. They're jobs in the heartland of this country. They're jobs that help grow the economy, make it more prosperous. And it strikes me, at least, that what we ought to be looking at is more jobs in this country, less investment in foreign regimes from where we get a lot of our energy today. $1 billion a day is what we send outside the United States because of our addiction to foreign oil. We have a dangerous dependence upon foreign energy, and we have a fuel that, as I said, displaces 445 million barrels of oil every single year, more than we import from Saudi Arabia. That is a pretty remarkable number when you think about it. And we had a debate here a few weeks ago on the floor of the Senate about whether or not we ought to change tax policy with regard to oil companies. And the decision was reached that we shouldn't do that. That would be punitive. It directed it to oil companies. We decided, too, that it would raise taxes on gas for people in this country. I would make the same argument here today, Mr. President. You are talking about a tax increase, and a large tax increase, which you know is going to get passed on. So you're talking about raising taxes on consumers at a time when we can least afford it. We have today $3.50 to $4 a gallon gasoline. The last thing that consumers in this country need is something that would actually push that gas price higher. In fact, if you did away with biofuels altogether, which some people would like to do, there's a study out in last year in 2010 that said the price per gallon of gasoline would go up by 89 cents a gallon. So you've got a proposal here that would have an adverse impact on energy prices, fuel prices for people in this country. which, frankly, again, because of the commitment that was made last December, strikes at the very heart of economic certainty, which so many of us come down here and talk about, the importance of having policies in place that are reliable, that people who are investing in particular areas of our economy can know are going to be there, at least when Congress makes a commitment. This completely undermines the commitment that Congress made back in December that this particular tax credit would be in place until the end of the year. So what the senator from Minnesota and I have done, have proposed a path forward that we believe makes sense and that is a thoughtful, measured, reasonable, responsible way in which to get to the goal that many of the proponents of the amendment that will be voted on tomorrow want to get to, and that is to phase down the volumetric ethanol excise tax credit, but it does it in a way that makes sense for the American consumer and for those who have investments in the industry today. So, Mr. President, I hope that my colleagues will take a look at that legislation, and we would like to see it. We think we can get that moving this year. And it does, as was noted by my colleague from Minnesota, put a significant amount toward reducing the debt, which I think is something that all of our colleagues are very, very interested in doing. So we will present that, obviously, to our colleagues and hope that there will be many who will choose to support it. On that, Mr. President, I yield the floor, or yield back to the Senator from Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor as well. Again, we just hope that our colleagues will look at this bill. It's a serious bill and very different than other bills that have been proposed in the past, in that it actually takes existing money that was set out at the end of this year and puts a big number, $1 billion, into debt reduction. Thank you.
The senator from Oklahoma.
Thank you. I've had a good time this afternoon listening to the debate on the amendment I've filed and visiting with senators. I think there's an important distinction that needs to be made in the arguments that have been brought forward. The first is we have a mandated level of ethanol that has to be produced and blended into gasoline, and it grows from now on. There will be 0 job losses if this amendment is improved. The second thing is my colleague, and I love him to death, from South Dakota, says we're going to save $1 billion. We can save 3 if we eliminate the VTEC blending subsidy. Now, why should we do that? Here's a subsidy that goes to all the blenders of gasoline in the United States, all of them. And they all have called and written and said, we don't want the $3 billion for the rest of the year. We don't want it. We actually have a letter here from the National Petrochemical and Refiners Association, which they're all members of, saying we don't want this money. So the best way to get money against the deficit is to not give money to people who don't want it on something that's already mandated anyway. I spent a great deal of time listening to my colleague from Iowa, Senator Grassley, and his figures were very good, but they were only up through 2008. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, 40% of last year's corn crop was utilized to convert to ethanol. Now, why would the American Bakers Association, the American Frozen Food Institute, the American Meat Institute, California Dairies, the Grocery Manufacturers Association, the International Dairy Foods Association, the Milk Producers Council, the National Chicken Council, the National Council of Chain Restaurants, the National Meat Association, the National Restaurant Association, the National Turkey Federation, the National Wildlife Federation, which is just about a third of people who are endorsing this, why would they be for this? Because it's not just less than 3% the cost of food. It has been, this last year, the significant driver. Corn prices are at $7.65 a bushel. They're 2.5 times what they were 3.5 years ago. And I'm not against the farm, and I'm for ethanol. I don't want to do away with ethanol blending. I don't want to do away with ethanol as a substitute. But we have a way to get the same amount of ethanol produced and put into our cars without spending $3 billion between now and the end of the year, or $5.8 billion is what it's averaged over the last few years. We've spent $34 billion of money we didn't have subsidizing something that's mandated. I mean, it even goes beyond the Reagan quote, which his was, government view of the economy could be summed up in a few short phrases: if it moves, tax it; if it keeps moving, regulate it; and if it stops moving, subsidize it. We have the incentive in to blend the ethanol. And that incentive is you, by law, have to blend it. They don't have a choice. So we're going to use ethanol in this country. Now, another factor that the American people ought to take into consideration, when you go buy a gallon of fuel today, you already have $1.72 worth of subsidy in there. And that doesn't have anything to do with oil and gas drilling. That has to do with the subsidies that go to all this program for ethanol. And I'm for using cellulosic. I'm actually for using corn ethanol. I just don't think we ought to pay twice for it. I think we ought to pay once. The number that the senator from Minnesota talked about in terms of subsidies, I've worked on the President's Commission on Debt. I've worked with the Gang of Six. You can't be for changing the tax code to get rid of tax expenditures and vote against this amendment. I mean, how do you explain, here's one that we don't need the incentive for, and we're going to pay for, and yet you want to say you want to solve the problems of the country, but the first time we have a vote to really eliminate one that will make no difference in terms of the amount of ethanol that's produced in this country, it'll just save us $3 billion. You can't be on both sides of that issue. Let me address the oil and gas industry for a minute. They get accelerated depreciation and write-off. That's true. And that amounts to taking legitimate business expenses and saying you can write them off sooner. Why did we do that? And this started in 1903, by the way. That's when we started it. We started it because it's a capital-intensive business in terms of the exploration. It's associated with a lot of dry holes. Now, the very companies that we say we want to take some of their, quote, subsidies, there's a big difference between a subsidy that is a tax credit and allowing somebody advanced depreciation, because they're going to get to write it off anyhow. The net effect to the federal government's revenue, if you take all those away, is still zero. The federal government doesn't get any additional money because under accounting standards, they get to write off those expenses anyway. They just don't get to write them off as fast. So the body's already chosen to not do that because they're legitimate business expenses. We're not saying take away legitimate business expenses from the ethanol distilleries or the blenders. We're just saying don't pay them money for something that they're going to have to do anyhow that they've already said to us they don't want. And tomorrow during the debate on this, I will add to the record the statement from the National Petrochemical and Refiners Association. The other point I'd make, there's no question we're not energy independent. And there's no question that biofuels and cellulosic ethanol can contribute to what our results can be in terms of maintaining that independence. But we're the only nation in the world where we as citizens own more oil and gas than Canada, China, and Saudi Arabia combined, and our government won't let us have it. Now think about that for a minute. According to the Congressional Research Service, there's more oil, gas, and gas liquids untapped in the United States than is known in all of Canada, all of China, and all of Saudi Arabia combined. So the reason we're in trouble and importing oil is because our own government won't let us have our own resources. Why would we continue that? That's a debate for another time. No matter what we believe in terms of green energy, what we do know that we're 30 years away from getting away from carbon-based fuels. at the earliest. And so we can either pay a price, or we can either buy from the Saudis or buy from other Middle Eastern countries, or we can develop our own. And you talk about jobs. The estimate is if we would truly go after our own energy, we would generate over 100,000 jobs a year the next 10 years in the oil and gas industry in this country, cleanly. The other comment I've heard is that this amendment wasn't brought up properly. Well, let me talk about something for a minute. When the senator from South Dakota and myself came to the Senate, the first 2 years, you could offer an amendment on anything, on any bill, at any time. Because that's the way the Senate was intended to operate. That you had, as a senator, a member of this body, you had the right to offer an amendment. Now, you may lose it, or it may get tabled, but you have the right to do it. That's not a majority leader's prerogative. It's a prerogative of every individual senator that you ought to cherish and protect. Because if the majority leader is the only one that will decide what amendments get offered and when they get offered, this is no longer the U.S. Senate. It's no longer an ability to offer what is in the best interest of our country or our constituency. And the very fact that we don't want to have amendments, controversial amendments that we have much disagreement on, coming to the floor because we don't want to have to go home and defend it, or we don't want to vote on it because we might lose it. The Senate ought to be a free place to offer ideas and get them voted down. In my first 2 years in the Senate, I had tons of amendment votes. As a matter of fact, I had every amendment voted down. There wasn't an amendment I won. But I had the freedom to offer the amendments. And you know what? We passed 10 times as much legislation in that Congress than we have the last 2. So limiting amendments is not the prerogative of the majority leader. Deciding what bills come to the floor is the prerogative of the majority leader. And if we want to go home and tell our constituents that we've voted against saving $3 billion, that we're going to borrow 40% of it from the outside of this country because we don't like the way an amendment was brought up, how else do you bring up an amendment if you can't in the U.S. Senate? Every true and proper procedure was followed in bringing this amendment up. And had this amendment been allowed to come up, if other members hadn't objected to it, we would have never used cloture to bring an amendment up. You shouldn't have to use cloture to bring an amendment up. You should be able to bring any amendment you want up and let senators have the courage to vote the way they want on it, rather than to say, I'm going to hide it behind not having to vote, so I'm going to object to having a vote on an amendment. Well, if we start down that process, we're never going to have any amendments. And every amendment's going to end up having to have 60 votes just to be brought up. Because if we're going to move to that procedure, and I know procedure in this body pretty well, then I'll insist that we do it all the time. That'll dead stop the Senate. So the idea that you can hide behind the excuse that even though you want to save the $3 billion, but you don't like the way the amendment was brought up, is a pretty flimsy excuse to go home and explain to your public that you think we should never have cloture motions on amendments. We ought to be able to bring any amendment up at any time. Now, I see the majority leader coming to the floor. He's a dear friend of mine. He has the hardest job in Washington. There's no question. But the privilege to bring an amendment to the floor ought to be protected for both sides of the aisle. And you vote it down, you table it, but you do something with it. Let me just finish by saying I agree this is supposed to expire at the end of this year. I hope it does, because we don't need it. Our corn farmers don't need it. The worldwide demand for corn is high. We're going to continue to produce ethanol. We have a federally mandated requirement that we produce ethanol. This amendment doesn't touch that, never intended to touch that. But ethanol as a fuel should be processed to the next stage, which is methanol. Because methanol is not water soluble, and it has the same octane rating as gasoline. Ethanol is not a great fuel. It's not an economical fuel. But we can take that same carbon atom and add to it and create methanol from corn and get a much better fuel that can be transported much easier and have much greater effect on our economy and have much better gas mileage and less effect on the engines and drivetrains and all the other smog prevention that we have on automobiles today. So let me say it again. I'm not against using biocrops. I'm for biocrops. I'm not against cellulosic-based. I'm not against ethanol. I'm not against algae. But ExxonMobil has spent a couple of billion of their own money on algae-based biofuels without the government's help, which is one of the points with this amendment. We no longer need the help. We no longer need to spend this money. So as we debate tomorrow, I look forward to the debate. I'll be on the floor all day to answer questions and to debate the pros and cons of this amendment. And I thank the Senate for the time, and I yield the floor.
The Majority Leader.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to S. Res. 207.
With that, the clerk will report.
S. Res. 207, supporting National Men's Health Week.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and the motion reconsidered be laid on the table.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that on Tuesday, June 14th, following the 215 cloture vote on the Coburn Amendment number 436 is modified, Senator Rubio of Florida be recognized as if in morning business for his maiden speech in the Senate.
Without objection.
I ask consent that the appointment to desk appear separately in the record as if made by the chair.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask
Now available.
this is business day adjourned until 10 a.m. on Tuesday, June 14th. Following the prayer and the pledge, the journal proceedings be approved to date. The morning hour be deemed expired. Time for two leaders be reserved for the use later in the day. Following any leader remarks, the Senate proceed to a period of morning business till 11 a.m. with senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each. The time equally divided and controlled between two leaders or the designees, with the majority controlling the first half, Republicans controlling the final half. Following that morning business, the Senate proceed to executive session under the previous order. Further, that the filing deadline for second-degree amendments to the Coburn Amendment, number 436, as modified, be at 11:30 tomorrow morning.
Without objection.
Mr. President, tomorrow at noon there will be up to 2 roll call votes in relation to the Checky and Salas nominations. Additionally, at 2:15 p.m. there will be a roll call vote on the cloture motion Senator Coburn filed on his ethanol amendment. Mr. President, if there is no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that adjourn under the previous order following remarks of Senator Thune, who will speak as if in debate, and debate only. And
without objection.
I didn't realize Senator Coburn was here. And just so we'll have some rough idea, could I ask Senator Thune how long you wish to speak?
10 minutes.
Okay. So let's say 10 minutes, Senator Coburn. Another 10 minutes. So that would be the issue. That would be the order that Senator Coburn be recognized following 10-minute remarks. Senator Thune, for up to 10 minutes.
Without objection.
What'd you say? Both for debate only, and we've already made that clear. I would note the opposite of quorum.
Okay.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
The Senator from South Dakota.
I ask unanimous consent that quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, one of the I think probably the senator from Oklahoma has a strongly held view about ethanol, particularly on this issue, on the VTEC. And I understand that. And I understand there are members here who would like to see that particular tax credit go away. I understand that. And what the senator from Minnesota and I have come up with is a way for them to achieve that objective. But it does it in a way that is reasonable, that is measured, and that doesn't totally, in the middle of the year, abruptly disrupt an industry and all the investment that's been made. I mean, the question I would ask my colleagues, Mr. President, is does our word mean anything around here? We passed this in December. There were 81 senators who voted for a package of tax extenders, one of which was the volumetric ethanol excise tax credit. 81 senators are on record. Now, you know, if you want to do away with it, there are, I think, lots of ways that you can do that. But the way that the senator from Oklahoma is proposing to do that is to say tomorrow, let's pass this and let's end it. $2.5 billion we can save the taxpayers. Well, we about $500 million a month is about what this thing is going to cost, and every month that goes by, there's a little less available to the taxpayers. What we are saying is we put $1 billion today into this proposal that would go toward debt retirement. And we phase out the tax credit to which the senator from Oklahoma refers. And we take a very, I think, forward-looking, futuristic type view toward ethanol production in this country, biofuels production in this country, because we're going to be capped out at 15 billion gallons is what the RFS, the Renewable Fuel Standard, to which the senator from Oklahoma referred, we're going to hit that. And then we've got to get to the next generation of biofuels. Well, I would say with all due respect to my colleague from Oklahoma that methanol is not a realistic option. I mean, you would have to retool every plant in this country. We have 204 plants in America today that indirectly or directly employ 500,000 Americans. Those are the jobs that are impacted by that. We have had policy on the books now for nearly 30 years, which has encouraged the investment in these plants on the belief that we need to get away from dependence upon foreign sources of energy, which I think is that still should be a stated objective of all our energy policy. We ought to be looking for ways of producing more, and I'm for oil and gas. The reason I voted against the proposals that were leveled a couple of weeks ago that would have targeted the oil and gas industry is because I think we need all forms of energy. We need oil and gas. We need clean coal. We need biofuels. We need nuclear. We need any form of energy that we can generate and produce here in the United States I'm for it. I'm for it. And that's why I think that the future of this industry is still very bright, because I think there is an advanced biofuels future out there, and a cellulosic ethanol, next generation ethanol, whatever you want to call it, where we can make it from switchgrass, we can make it from bluestem grass, we can make it from corn stover, from these types of products. That future is out there, but you don't get there unless you have the corn-based platform to start with. Now, the senator from Oklahoma talked about the Renewable Fuel Standard and talked about this being redundant public policy. The only thing I would say is one of our colleagues from South Carolina has introduced an amendment to this bill which would end that. And I assume, I don't know this for a fact, that my colleague from Oklahoma would support that amendment, which would do away with the Renewable Fuel Standard, certainly.
You obviously didn't hear what I was saying as you were conversing with. I said I support ethanol. I wouldn't support that, and I said that. And I've been very upfront with you in the past. You know that my position is on that. So the question is, and I would ask him this question, how do you fit what the people who get this $3 billion, who you say it's going to have a negative impact, the very people who get the $3 billion who say they don't want it, why would they say that if it's going to have a negative impact on their industry?
Well, I would say to my colleague from Oklahoma, and I was not aware, you said he supports ethanol. I'll take him at his word on that. I was not aware that he supports the RFS. If there is an amendment to strike the RFS offered, which there will be, and if my colleague from Oklahoma, if I'm wrong in saying that you would oppose that amendment to strike the...
I will oppose that amendment, but my worry is because of the process of the Senate, we may not get that amendment to vote on. And I think my colleague, as part of the leadership on our side, would recognize that we have a problem with amendments.
Well, and I don't disagree with that. I think that there's an issue here with amendments. I would say that the way that this, and I've not argued it's your prerogative to bring this up, it's your prerogative to file cloture, which you've done in this circumstance. But I think that the renewable fuel standard, which creates the sort of the policy construct that we're talking about here today, is one aspect of the what we call biofuels policy going forward. But the other aspect of it has been historically, at least going back for a long time, the blender's credit. Now, what I would tell you, because the statement that you made is all the people who get this don't want it. Well, that's not true. Now, the large integrated oil companies, which are also refiners and in many cases retailers of refined gasoline, don't want it, maybe don't want it. I assume that's that you have a letter to that effect. But there are lots of smaller refiners who do want it. And there are also an awful lot of, the blender's credit gets passed on to the retailer, which gets passed on, hopefully, to the consumer. And the people in this country who are going to be impacted by this aren't just the large integrated oil companies. I mean, if you talk about the large integrated oil companies saying that they don't want this, they said in hearings before congressional committees a few years ago that they didn't want the oil subsidies that they get in the tax code today. I mean, they're on the record saying that. And yet we voted to keep those in place just a few weeks ago.
Would the Senator yield for a question?
Sure.
Through the Chair? Would you define what a subsidy is to you? Because part of the problem with this debate is we keep saying subsidies, but we don't have any subsidies in the true oil and gas industry, not in your state, not in North Dakota, and not in Oklahoma. What we have is accelerated depreciation, which even if you took away, the dollars to the federal government would not increase. So how is there a subsidy to the oil and gas industry?
What I would characterize, I think you have to say that when we characterize what you call tax expenditures, there are a whole bunch of them that fall in that category. It's about $1.1 trillion a year, and I know you're familiar with that because you served on the President's Debt Commission, that in some way, form or another, reduce the tax liability of various individuals and businesses around this country. Now, I don't disagree. In fact, I would work with you on a proposal that would address and look at all those types of tax expenditures. I just think it's punitive to single out one, say we're going to kill this one, after we made a commitment in December with 81 votes in the United States Senate that we're for this. I mean, I don't know how we can, in good faith, go to this industry, which employs 500,000 Americans, and say, we're going to pull the rug out from under you after 6 months. But that being said, I would characterize it as anything that reduces the tax liability that is public policy. I think it's characterized as tax expenditures. The oil depletion allowance, the intangible drilling costs, those are all things that are unique to the oil industry.
Which would include charitable contributions?
Well, of course.
That's a subsidy?
So, well,
it's the same category.
Under the definition of tax expenditure, sure it would. But what I'm telling you is that oil depletion allowances and intangible drilling costs are characterized, I think, for subsidy purposes the same way that the ethanol tax credit is. We have lots of tax credits in the tax code. We have an earned income tax credit. We have lots of what we would characterize as tax expenditures. And so I guess what I'm saying to you is you may characterize it differently and say that's accelerated depreciation, but in fact, for purposes of at least description as we describe things around here, it fits into that category. My point simply is this. The oil industry came in front of congressional committees in the past and said they didn't want those. And so for them to say they don't want this particular blender's credit, I'm not sure, in my view, certainly isn't determinative, because I think the very companies who get the blender's credit, the large integrated oil companies, also view ethanol as a threat. It is today, like it or not, the only viable alternative to petroleum. It's the only one we have. It's 10% of our fuel supply in this country. And so I'm not debating the senator from Oklahoma about whether or not the merits of this particular policy, at least in its current form, shouldn't be transformed and shouldn't be reformed. I'm saying that we should. And I have come to you with a proposal to do that. That's not something, obviously, that you agree to, and that's fine. you're entitled to not support that. But I believe that we ought to reform this. And I think the way that we reform is we do it in a reasonable way that doesn't cut it off tomorrow, but rather phases it out. And I think that the senator from Oklahoma, that, to me, that's something that is a win for him as well. He gets what he wants. He gets the phase out, plus you get $1 billion in debt reduction, which, if this thing goes to the end of the year, we get zero. We get goose egg. This thing expires at the end of the year. Whether it gets extended or not remains to be seen, but one thing we know with certainty is that I am putting a proposal on the table today that gets $1 billion in debt reduction, that provides some certainty at least in phasing out the VTEC, and also makes an investment in blender pumps, which is something that's really important to the future of this industry. So I think it's a reasonable way in which to deal with this issue. Senator from Oklahoma and I obviously have disagreement on this subject, and that's not probably going to change. But I'm offering what I think is a reasonable proposal that gets you where you want to end up, and I think also it is a way in which we can keep this industry from having the rug pulled out from under them after we made a commitment to them in December of last year. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Oklahoma.
Let me make a couple of points. When the federal government writes a tax credit, that means we take money from our Treasury, which is empty, so therefore we borrow it, and we write a check to people. When we have a, quote, accelerated depreciation, what we do is allow people to pay less back in. Big difference. How many of the ethanol refineries and blenders are not represented by this group? It's about 11%. They all reside in the upper Midwest. That's why there's such a resistance to it. When I met with the representatives of the ethanol industry, the reason they don't want the credit to go away is because they're afraid that they won't be able to drive as hard a bargain with the large blenders of gasoline. That they'll actually be able to determine what their grind cost is, in other words, what their true cost is. The difference between what the senator from Minnesota and the senator from South Dakota offer is $2 billion. It's the only difference. Theirs is to phase it out and spend $1 billion on pumps and infrastructure, money we don't have, and mine's to say quit doing it because we're going to blend the ethanol anyway. That's the only difference in the two programs. One continues to subsidize non-economic blenders, obviously, because they want it, a very small portion, but the vast majority of people who are producing ethanol-blended gasoline, how did it ever get to the point in our country where the federal government's going to tell you that you have to buy a gasoline that's only 65% as efficient as the gasoline you were buying? And oh, by the way, because it's only 65% efficient, it actually pollutes more. That's why in this list of people supporting this are all the environmental groups, because they know it's bad policy. And the reason I support a mandated level of ethanol is until we have a cogent drilling policy in this country that says we're going to actually utilize our own resources, then we need to keep ethanol. But what really ought to happen is we ought to let markets determine it. We'll all be better off. We'll have less government regulation, we'll have less tax code expenditures, and the markets will determine what the most efficient product is by what people will buy. What people will buy, what they want to buy. It's called freedom. And we've got ourselves in this mix where what people don't realize is we're down to only 47% of our oil coming into this country is coming from outside now. We've moved from 62 down to 47%. And the reason is because the oil and gas industry has actually gone out there and found an environmentally smart way to produce tons of gas liquids, which are easier to convert into fuels than anything, easier than oil, easier than any other product that we have. So the senator didn't really answer why the people who are getting the money don't want it, and yet we should continue sending it to them. I mean, ask yourself the question. We're broke. We're going to run a 1.4 or 1.5 or $1.6 trillion deficit this year, and here's a way to save $3 trillion. And the people we're going to send the money to and borrow the money to be able to send it to them don't want it, but yet they can't answer why they don't want it. This represents 97% of all the blending in the country. They don't want the money. And we're going to sit here as a body and continue to send them money they don't want? Go home and explain that to your constituents. Which child are we going to take opportunity away because we don't have the courage to do the smart thing? We have a mandate. They have to blend it. They're making a ton of money. One final point, and I'll let the Senate staff go home. Every time you go to buy a gallon of gasoline today, the price you pay at the pump is not the price you pay. If you look at all the subsidies that go into ethanol, when you go look at that $3.75 or that $4 around here, $3.50 in Oklahoma and Colorado, add $1.72 per gallon to it, because that's what you really paid in terms of the government support for the ethanol program, in terms of subsidies, $1.72 a gallon. So you buy it for $3.50, add $1.72, you're paying $5.22 a gallon for it. You just don't know that we've picked your pocket through the government expenditures. Out of your taxes that you've paid, we're paying $1.72 per gallon. It makes no sense. And what this does is eliminate 45 cents of that. It doesn't take all away the grants and the loans and the low-interest loans. The other thing that people don't recognize is most of the ethanol plants, even with this subsidy, have been bought out because they weren't economical, because they didn't know how to run them. That's why most of them ended up with the large companies, because they didn't know how to run them. They weren't efficient. And now that they're profitable, even without the blender's credit. So it's a simple question. Do we save $3 billion or save $1 billion? I would tell you that what's in front of us as a nation with our $14.3 trillion debt, I'm going to opt for the kids that follow us and the grandkids. I'm going for the $3 billion, not the $1. And with that, I yield the floor.
The Senate stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow.
The Senate resumes tomorrow. On their agenda is a vote on judicial nominations for district judges in New Jersey.